Multitasking is an absolute con. Running up the stairs. We feel like we're being chased by a bear.
Anna Mathur is a highly regarded psychotherapist, speaker, and 4 times Sunday Times bestselling author.
And I think we're just constantly switched on. We're lacking the things that feed our souls. You get a message from a friend saying, do you want to meet up? And you just think, oh my gosh, that's just another thing on my to-do list now. You've just added something else to my to-do list.
She empowers people to release guilt, reduce stress, and cultivate self-compassion.
When you start living in more alignment with your values, you can ruffle some feathers along the way. We're being robbed by this kind of relentless pursuit of productivity.
How can you find calm in the chaos?
We want to live really hard, but I think the biggest risk is that we'll get to the rest of our lives, the end of our lives, and we'll think, where was I in all of that?
I can feel my shoulders coming down from my ears in this conversation. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Vision of Health, the podcast where I talk to qualified experts about what being healthy really looks like in everyday life. I'm Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. I'm a medical doctor specialising in cancer research. My mission is to bridge the gap between science and real life, offering you practical advice to help you improve your lifestyle that is actually backed by the evidence. I'm Dr. Frankie, and this is my Vision of Health. How often have you found yourself feeling overwhelmed and stressed with how much we're expected to fit into our days? Even the smallest thing can lead to a spiral of stress. I know that feeling all too well. Anna Mathur is a highly regarded psychotherapist, speaker, and 4 times Sunday Times bestselling author. Known for her warm and relatable approach, Anna specialises in supporting busy parents and professionals as they navigate the challenges of modern life. Anna Mathur, welcome to Vision of Health.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel slightly on a selfish level, I have so many questions that I want to ask, and I really hope will resonate with our listeners. I'll jump straight into it. As I mentioned in the introduction, there's so many of us who don't necessarily have a diagnosable mental health condition, and we don't fit into those brackets, but do struggle with our mental well-being, having quite overwhelming feelings of overwhelm or stress. Why do you think it is, and what do you think it is about our lives that causing people to struggle in this way?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we just met at the door downstairs, didn't we? And we both were kind of just about on time, but we were, I was finishing off a conversation. You were trying to find the thing to get in the door. And we both had that kind of slightly frazzled element about us. And I think so much of it is that life has just sped up. We're consuming so much data. I was on the train and there wasn't a person that wasn't doing an email or just responding to some messages or listening to something or reading something. And I think we're just constantly switched on. And I think we find hacks. I love a hack. Anything that can help me be more productive, anything that can save time. And I think what we're really missing is slowness. I think fundamentally, whilst we probably get more done than ever, we know more than ever, we have more knowledge that we can access than ever before, there never needs to be a question that goes unanswered. Like in my house, if you want to know the biggest kind of dinosaur, like one of my kids, bam, that we can find out all the information that years ago we would have had to go to a library
and get out an encyclopedia
and get a book out. If my daughter wanted to see a picture of a unicorn, we would have had to go to the library. We would have had to get outside. We would have had to make our way there. We would have had to browse. We would have, all of this, those moments, those pauses, that stillness is just, I think it's just being busied away. And I think whilst it serves us in so many levels and it serves our culture because we're all really productive, actually, fundamentally underneath it all, I think we know that we're missing something. We're not feeling present. We're trying to be the best we can be and we're trying to do the most that we can do. But at the end of the day, how in our lives are we actually? So I think it's this tension in our souls that we're doing everything we can to live really hard. But are we really living in line with what our hearts want and what our bodies are wired for? And connection with people and meaningful conversations, and that all require us to slow down. And it's very countercultural to slow down now.
I really feel that. You know, it's funny, this morning I squeezed in a run before our recording. It's quite early. And I only ran 4 kilometres. And I literally did a 4-kilometre loop and I ended up back at my house. And usually any runners listening will know that most people run 5 kilometres.
Yeah.
And that was totally me. You know, I would usually loop my house a few times to make it up to 5. And I thought to myself, you know what? In the topic of what we're about to talk about today, I'm going to stop at 4. Yeah. I'm going to go home, have time to drink my coffee and like have a cuddle with my dog and get ready for this recording more slowly and less rushed than I would normally. And it felt like a real kind of success. And isn't that funny? Because my usual mornings would be, you know, time-stamped, cram. Yeah. And I had to be really intentional with actually just giving myself time to have that connection you mentioned and, you know, that time at home.
Yeah. And it has to be really conscious, doesn't it? And it can sometimes feel like we're doing something against our own, like, I really want to get that other kilometre in. I really want to round it up. But, you know, it's like this little internal war that we're told what we should be doing. But actually, it's that listening to what the need is. You know, I need a little bit of slowness. You know, what's happening to our nervous systems in all of this? Like, I catch myself, and I know so many people do this, running around my own house, like literally from one room to another, running up the stairs. You know, to quickly go and get this, quickly go and get that. I'm just doing this, I'm just doing that. But actually, we're just cramming. You know, our bodies feel like we feel like we're being chased by a bear.
I saw a social media post about that on your page where it was like walking up the stairs instead of running so that you can tell your nervous system you're not being chased by a bear. Do you think we are living in this chronically stressed state?
Absolutely.
Why is it important to calm our nervous system?
Because it's not making us happy. I really do think we're lacking the things that feed our souls. We're lacking those intentional conversations. You know, how often do we just sit with someone and we lose track of time? And you know, when you haven't got one eye on your phone or you see something flash up or, you know, something's going off, like I've taken all the notifications off my watch because I recognised that when they were on there, my eyes would just flick down and I'd see a message. And suddenly what we don't realise is that multitasking is an absolute con. It really is. You know, we think if I'm answering an email whilst cooking my kids' dinner, whilst keeping an eye on someone's homework, whilst, you know, adding something to the shopping list, I think I'm literally bossing it. You know, look at all of these things that I'm doing. Whereas actually what we do not realise is that we are absolutely exhausting ourselves. And I think sometimes we try and get everything done so that we can earn rest at the end of the day. So, right, I've ticked everything off. Now I can really give myself permission to rest, as if rest is something that we have to earn. So rest has become something that feels indulgent. You know, slowing down has become something that feels unproductive and lazy. Can you remember sick days? Can you remember sick days? You know, where you'd be at home and you were unwell, and you couldn't work because your work was at work on the computer. You couldn't, you know, what could you do apart from just
watch films,
sit in your loungewear, watch films and daytime TV, you know, rest physically. And I think in this digital age, we feel like we've struck lucky because I can work whilst lying on the sofa with my children. So in one way, I feel like that's amazing because it enables me to do this. But actually, it's boundaryless. You know, my husband would be sending emails at like 10:30 at night in bed. And I started feeling quite lonely. I started saying to him, like, you're in the office right now. He's like, no, I'm just quickly replying to this email. But actually, it's little things like this that begin to erode connection. It begins to limit the level of depth that we have in relationships. And we are wired for connection with other people. And so it's all of these things that are just kind of edging out the things that really feed us. And now he, you know, for the last kind of couple of years, he doesn't have his phone in the bedroom at all. And I would say that it's been so good for our relationship. It's just that when we are doing this multitasking, we think we're winning. Like, isn't it amazing that I'm in bed chilling and I'm actually sending an email?
Yeah.
You know, when actually it's exhausting for your mind to keep flicking between tasks. You know, and that's what's happening.
You really kind of hit a nerve there for me because I had a sick day recently, but actually I had an admin day.
Yeah.
You know, I sat on the sofa and I got through the emails I hadn't opened, you know, the ones that are less important and they sit at the bottom of your inbox. And I wrote a few social media captions and I edited some content. And I didn't just allow myself to watch the daytime TV. I maybe let myself nap when I needed to, but I really treated it like an admin day. And that's really something to think about. You mentioned about not having phones in the bedroom and trying to avoid multitasking and being more conscious about that. Slowing down in your house and not necessarily running up the stairs and rushing around. What are some of the other ways that we can calm our nervous system?
So there's breathing properly. You know, I think when we're living in this chronically stressed state, it's recognizing that actually we're not even breathing fully, because we are, you know, it's like we're being chased. We've got a level of adrenaline and cortisol coursing around our system. We're not in a space where we're actually just kind of dropping into where we are. We're not very present. And it's things like just noticing where your shoulders are, because often we're carrying exactly. And just dropping back into your body and just thinking, okay, I'm here. Yeah. This is where I am. This is who I'm with. This is special to me. This is important in this moment. This right here, you and I, this is the only thing that is real and that exists. You know, there's the future that hasn't yet happened, the past that has happened. And this is the only moment, really. And it's just kind of bringing yourself back and recognizing that actually when we think we're being productive, I will brush my teeth, right? And I will traipse around the house and I'll be picking stuff up and I'll be like filling up a water bottle, like with my toothbrush like this and trying to like unscrew the cap with my neck. And I looked the other day and there was literally a trail of toothpaste all around the ground floor of my house. And I thought, man, it was just this recognition that I think I'm being so productive, but actually I'm not. I'm actually creating more work for myself later. Yeah. You know, the more single-minded we can be, that when we recognize that actually this moment it might be boring, it might be mundane, but actually there's something really special about the fact that we're never going to live this moment again. And what it does, it starts encouraging you just to be a little bit more conscious. I was washing up some pots the other day. Those little like ramekin things.
Yeah, that you get the puddings in.
Yeah, and I was just standing at the sink and I just thought, oh my gosh, like think of all the times that I've used these little ramekins, right? Dinner parties, Christmas Day with like dips in and olives. I've put popcorn in for the kids on the sofa. And it was just drawing my attention to that moment, enabled me to go on this like really lovely little journey in my mind of all these special moments just triggered by this little pot. And I love that because it was so therapeutic. And it's these little moments that I think we can so easily just whiz our way through. And we want to live really hard. But I think the biggest risk, and I think this is the fear deep down underneath it all, is that we'll get to the rest of our lives, that, you know, the end of our lives, and we'll think, where was I in all of that? You know, or we lose someone that we love and we'll think, when was the last time I was really, really with this person, like wholeheartedly? And I think, you know, we applaud ourselves because we get so much done. But at the end of the day, I think we recognize that it's not hitting the spot.
I can imagine that quite a lot of parents feel like that when now, you know, being present with your children is less because you can sit and they can play and you can do an email or you can connect with someone else on your phone. And I think when you put it like that, you know, when we look back, what is a successful life? Because I have this real fear of not fulfilling my potential. You know, I look back at my years and I think, what did I do this year? And I think we need to actually measure success more, how you said then about, but I was present, I built these relationships rather than I had another tick box of achievement.
Yeah, sometimes it really looks like going backwards on paper. Like if you think about university and Facebook, right? It was all about how many friends you had. And now social media, it's all about how many connections you have. And LinkedIn, it's all about number. But I had this really just wild experience. I mean, the pandemic just really challenged relationships, right? Because you couldn't see those people that were part of your day-to-day lives. You ended up connecting with the people that you really wanted to connect with. And I think many people came out of the pandemic with, on paper, less friendships. And we went through a big loss a couple of years ago, a big traumatic loss where I had no capacity for social anything. I couldn't just put on a happy face and be around people that maybe I just used to put a happy face on and kind of chatter away. I didn't have the capacity to do any of that. And I found that actually my social circles like massively decreased. And I thought I'd feel really sad. But actually, it feels so much more aligned with how it's meant to be. You know, if we were to take away WhatsApp, we were to take away social media, we were to get rid of our phones. You know, if all of the internet was just to go bust, who would we really make the effort to spend time with? Because we have limited social battery, just like any other form of battery, physical energy, social energy. And I think what's happening, we are so connected. We are more connected to more people than anyone in previous generations could have ever possibly been connected to. Yet I feel socially there's more loneliness. You know, and I think we are spending our social energy in little interactions, little catch-ups, little how you doing, little responses that don't actually get to the core of how you are. Because if you would say that with all the people that you're connected to, you'd be emotionally on the floor. So I just think, yeah, we're spending our social energy. So when it really comes down to it, and this is where kind of overwhelm and burnout comes in, you get a message from a friend saying, do you want to meet up? And you just think, oh my gosh, that's just another thing on my to-do list now. You've just added something else to my to-do list. And you just think, I haven't got it in me. But actually, if we were to start looking at all of those little interactions and thinking, how could I swap out 50 messages, 50 WhatsApp back and forths in the week to saying, you know what, let's just cut the WhatsApp. Let's meet for coffee next week. You know, what would the quality and depth of that connection do for your soul in a way that frittered WhatsApp messages will never be able to do? It's better than nothing. But I think that's what we're craving.
Yeah. I actually find myself reflecting on lockdown quite a lot. And it's quite a positive reflection for me. I think about how much more calm my life was and how much when you did connect with someone, it was a FaceTime or a video call and you actually had a proper conversation rather than those quick those quick catch-ups. Because I actually often feel my friends must think I'm quite annoying because I'm always on my phone for work, but I'll have 10 unopened WhatsApps. Yeah. And I actually find looking at my unopened WhatsApps really overwhelming. I have to be in a really kind of mentally clear space to reply to people properly. Isn't it funny that, you know, it seems like a quick message, but actually it does drain our mental energy.
Yeah. And I think if we could be more boundaried around all of those other interactions, those DMs, those quick fire emails, those, you know, then actually what we'd probably be doing is scraping back some of that social energy to be able to pour it into those relationships that actually mean something. And I think that's probably why it's hard for you to go there, because you're thinking, actually, this is meaningful. I want to give more than I have in this moment to these conversations. But it's hard then to find that resource.
Yeah. And I think it's actually quite hard to do in practice, isn't it? Because we're now all used to that. I guess what you said about suggesting that you don't message so much and actually meet up, or maybe setting yourself time in the day where you're actually going to reply rather than it being when you're in the middle of something else, you know, constantly on our phone. But it's actually quite hard in practice to think about how you change that because we're so used to it now. Yeah,
I downloaded this app and I would honestly say it's changed my life. And I'm actually really upset that I didn't find it earlier. It's called App Block.
Okay.
And it literally just blocks your apps.
Oh, wow.
So you cannot go on these apps. Unlike my iPhone screen time thing that just flags up and is like...
Which we ignore.
Which, you know, and you just override it in a second, right? One click and you override it. And then I got this other amazing app and it was called 1 Sec and it makes you take a deep breath before you go onto the app. So you like open Instagram and it's like, take a deep breath and you have to wait for like 10 seconds. In that time, normally you're there thinking, do I actually want to go on here? And it says, do you actually want to go on here? And normally I'm like, yes, you've just made me wait 10 seconds. But what this app block does, it literally blocks it. So I cannot go on my email and my Instagram in the morning before I do the school drop off. I've got 3 young children. They require a lot. And I cannot go on those apps either from when I pick them up from school to when I put them to bed. And it's honestly changed my life.
Wow.
It's changed my parenting. It's changed that feeling of presence when you look back over your day and you think, where was I? Because I was there on the sofa with them. I was there sitting on the sofa chatting to my husband and I was with him. And I just think it's recognizing that the digital world is so, it's more clever than our brains, you know, a lot of the time. It is, it's keeping us going back there. You know, we want those dopamine hits. We have really challenged impulse control, I think, in this culture where we are told we do not have to wait for anything. And I think this is partly why we're just having these quick interactions, because we want to tick it off. We want to get that exchange. We want to put it back in that court, in the friend's court, or the email back in the colleague's court, so that we can swipe it off our list.
And then they reply straight away.
And then
and you think, now it's back on my to-do list.
Oh, I know. But I think it's this recognition that no one can wait and we can't wait. And actually there is so much value in the waiting. There is so much value in the walking to the library to go and see the unicorn. And there is so much value in actually just waiting to give that person the time that really does align with your values and gives you more chance of connection. So I think sometimes it's knowing that we can have the best will in the world to put in healthy boundaries, but this digital world is bigger than us, and you know, our impulse control, and we're told that we don't have to wait for anything and that we can do a million things at once, and that's how we define our worth and our value and our productivity. So I think it's finding those things that actually enforce those boundaries.
Yeah. I think that many of us are really aware of that. You know, I obviously post a lot of wellness content online, and I see a lot of posts talking about people's slow days or their slow morning routines. And I actually feel a real pang of guilt that mine is not like that at all. I'm, like you said, rushing from one thing to another, always a couple of minutes late to everything, always a little bit frazzled. And for me, it feels like the reality that's the only way I can fit everything in. And I've got lots of things that are important to me. So I think it's hard because many of us know that, but then it's really hard to have that discipline to see why it would be beneficial to live more slowly.
So I think really looking at what your values are. You know, for me, it's been present with my family, especially, you know, after seeing how life can just go upside down from, you know, 1 hour to the next. Suddenly everything is normal, and then suddenly nothing feels like it was ever going to be normal again. And it's those curveball moments in life, isn't it, that have us thinking, oh my gosh, I want to change some things up here. I want to make the most of the mundane, because in reality, when everything is upside down in life, when those curveballs swipe, all we want is the boring mundane. All we want is those moments of connection. All we want is life to slow down. So it's thinking, how can we not wait for those moments to come for us to reassess stuff and live more in line with our values? How can we sit down and, you know, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's talking with a friend, maybe it's just having that honest conversation with yourself and thinking, you know what, relationships are really important to me. Okay, who with? You know, if you only really have capacity to have kind of 3 or 4 really deep, meaningful relationships, who are those people? When's the last time you saw them? I did some terrifying maths the other day. My mum often comes over because she's great with my kids, right? My dad will often, he finds them quite a lot. So he'll often stay at home and do gardening, do jobs, right, while she's joining the chaos in our house. And I did this maths and I thought, man, if I only see him 4 times a year, you know, he's this age, he's likely to die at this age if we look at kind of family history and, you know, kind of heart disease and strokes and things like that. So in reality, I may only see him 8 times again, ever. What do those times look like? What are we doing when we're spending time together? Because I think it's that dissonance, you know, we call it in psychology. It's that way that you're acting, you're behaving, you're speaking, you're being, that actually isn't in line with a real core value of yours. So I think sometimes it is having that difficult conversation, that uncomfortable conversation, and thinking, playing it forward. You know, there are certain cultures and they will imagine their death. And I think we can feel so fearful of death because I think underneath it all, we're quite fearful that we're not really, really living.
Yeah.
We're not really in our lives, that we don't want to think about death. Whereas I've got a book called The Uncomfortable Truth, and this one was out last year. And the last chapter is that I'm going to die. It's the uncomfortable truth that I'm going to die. And it's, you know, I think we can be so fearful of it. It is one of the biggest fears that people say, you know, that they struggle with, when actually I think if we can hold a really gentle awareness of the fact that our life is limited, we don't know when it will end. I've got a friend and I remember going on a walk with her and she said that she imagines she's standing in a queue. At the front of the queue is your death. And you do not know where you are. You might be 70,000th in this queue. You might be second in this queue. And I remember hearing her say that. It was on a walk in lockdown. And I was like horrified. I was like, this is horrendous. I never want to think about that again. But of course, I kept meditating on it. It kept coming back into my mind. And I thought, wow, actually, if we can live life against this gentle awareness, the backdrop of the fact that it is not, it's finite, then maybe it can challenge us in this world where we're just taught to go with our feelings, do this, do anything, anything we want, we can have it. We can have it tomorrow. If actually we can hold this gentle awareness of the fact that our life is finite, then maybe we can reassess how we're living. Are we living in line with our values? Will we get to the end of our life and think, I did good. I had meaningful relationships. I made a difference in a way that actually was sustainable, and I had joy along the way.
Yeah, I think that's great motivation, isn't it? Because you're right. What is all of this productivity and success for if you're not enjoying the journey?
Yeah.
If day to day it feels uncomfortable and overwhelming.
Yeah. Because stress, it just robs us. I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed and overwhelmed, I literally have no sense of humour.
Honestly?
None.
And what really bothers me is I would say I quite frequently go through stressful patches, and I'm not my best self at all. Like, I'm snappy. I don't find little things funny. I don't make much time for the slow things that build relationships. And I sometimes think, if you met me now in this moment, that is how you would describe me as a person. Like, no sense of humour, snappy, rushing around everywhere. But I wouldn't inherently describe myself as that. I would, really fight for the fact that I'm like a bubbly, happy-go-lucky person. But in reality, there's sometimes periods where that less nice, snappy, stressed person is coming out way more.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm sure you're probably getting a lot done. I'm sure you're getting a lot done. But sometimes I think we don't actually realise what the cost of that is. This high productivity, the go, the on paper smashing it. But actually, what's the cost? And it's often hidden, which is why we tend to see people's front of house and we see everything that's been getting done. And we think, well, that's attainable. That's what, that's the standard. When actually, what we find in healthcare is that there's a cost. And the cost is that people aren't laughing. The cost is that people don't have the energy at the end of the day to have a meaningful conversation with someone that they love. The cost is that when you're frazzled, you don't have that cognitive, rational energy and ability to rationalize those anxious thoughts. So you're far more likely to just feel overwhelmed by them. The cost is that you're probably more likely to be leaning towards those quick fixes that actually rob you. That big glass of wine that feels like it's kind of an enforced exhale, when actually it's completely trashing your sleep and leaving you more frazzled the next day. But it's that quick fix. And we're more likely, because our impulse control is challenged when we're frazzled, we're more likely to go and quickly just do the grabby things that make us feel better in the moment, And so, we're being robbed by this kind of relentless pursuit of productivity. And it's about finding balance, because I love my job. I am like ADHD brain. Like, I churn things out at a rate of knots, but I have to recognize that I need to boundary myself. There is sometimes I get the most amazing idea and I have to put it on ice, and it literally pains me to not do things sometimes. But I think I've recognized, having gone through burnout, I don't know if you've ever gone through kind of physiological, like psychological burnout, but it was the most humbling thing was that I could not do stuff. Like, I literally could not do stuff. It was like my skin had been removed. My nerves, my nervous system was just exposed and raw. And even the happy noises in my house, which is often quite loud, I just couldn't even handle that. My husband would say, "What do you want for dinner?" And just the simple decision alone would just send me into a spiral of panic.
Yeah, I need to talk about this.
Yeah?
Two things. First of all, let's talk a bit about burnout. What is burnout for people listening? It's
when you have chronically overlooked the limits of your resources, chronically. And this is sometimes circumstantial. It might be that you had a massive project on at work There was no way to delegate. It was all down to you. It might be that, there are lots of people that I'm working with that are caring for parents whilst also caring for children. So the need coming at them is just huge, and there just isn't capacity for getting what they need amidst it all. So there's circumstantial factors that lead to burnout. And then there's kind of the self, we can have the self-criticism that we're just bullying ourselves from the inside out. We can have that sense that actually my worth and value is in what I do. And if I stop doing that, then who am I? It can be people pleasing. It's that I must be all things to all people. Otherwise, I'm not deserving of connection and joy in relationships. So we can have those circumstantial factors and we can have those internal factors. And if you get the two together, they are absolutely, it's a recipe for burnout.
And what would be some of those signs that someone was experiencing burnout?
So I think burnout happens over time, not overnight. But I think so many of the symptoms of burnout, we just associate with kind of the normal life, like not finding joy in the things that you have historically enjoyed, not being able to slow down, not enjoying that connection or having the capacity for that connection. It might be increased irritability, decreased ability to sleep, increased heart rate, decreased drive. Drive to do the things that nurture you, a feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, disconnection, loneliness, all of these things that I think, we've in many ways just accepted a part of modern life. And I think that's the biggest lie, is that, we've upped the bar for so many things in life, productivity, connections, all of these things, status, wealth, job title. But actually, I feel like we've lowered the bar for our own what we want for ourselves amidst it all, and that's the cost. So those are it basically is things like that. They just intensify, and it's knowing your little tells, your little signs of burnout, and mine are just increased irritability. I cannot handle stress. I am reactive. I am saying things and behaving, doing things that are not actually really aligned with who I am and how I want to be. I'm parenting in a way that actually jars with how I want to parent. I go against the things that I know are good for me. It can be more self-sabotaging. I can see a message from someone that I love and just feel like it's another part of the to-do list. I can find one thing, cereal will fall out the cupboard and I'm like, life is over. I'm like emotional displacement, like all of these emotions get heaped on these seemingly insignificant things. So it's, starting to notice, am I okay?
I think one of the things that I've always just thought was one of my worst qualities, but actually resonates a lot with what you said, is decision fatigue. Honestly, to the point where it can be crippling. Like I can't decide what I want for dinner. Like I just don't have the mental capacity to make that decision. And sometimes you just want someone to just pick up that job and take it out of your brain.
It's common. It's common. And we are faced with option paralysis. Like in our culture, I like going to really small supermarkets where you're not always going to get everything that you need because they don't have it. We love almond butter in our house. I literally could eat it by the spoon, and my local little Tesco doesn't have it, right? But what I love about it is that there isn't a million everything. I think we are faced with so many options all the time, more than ever before. A generation or two ago, there would be like 2 types of peanut butter. And that would be that. Here are the carrots. Now you have so many kinds of carrots. They cost all different. They're grown differently. And, it's like so no wonder when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're faced then with a million different options. Not only that, but all the knowledge that you have around what to eat, what's good for your brain, what's good for your body, it's just so much that the simple decisions, just when you're overwhelmed, just feel stifling.
So one of the things that's really popular on social media is having a morning routine. In some ways, I do agree with that because it takes some of the decision out of it. I just have like a little thing I do in the morning. I don't really need to think about it. And it gets me up and out. Do you think having a routine in that way is important? Because sometimes it can feel like if you've got to break the routine, that then causes anxiety.
Oh, I mean, I've been someone historically, I'm very routine oriented, right? So I think it's great to have a routine if that's what serves you, but it's what that is It may look very different to what someone else is, it's like, get up at 5, do this, do that, do that. And then you've achieved all of this by the beginning of the day. And I think often it's this pursuit of, I know that I need more and I'm not able to do it. And I'm not able to get these things for myself in day-to-day life because I'm living so fast. So I'm going to get up really early and tick those boxes of self-care. So I understand. Yes. And me too. Absolutely. But I think what's missed in all of this is the fact that need is so often overlooked. We know we need more, but in reality, we need different things every day. We're depleted in different ways every day. What I need one day might be to get myself out of bed and go and jump around, go and do some jumping around, go do a Peloton, whereas actually what I might need the next day, and I may wake up and think, I just literally don't have the energy, but that's what I do. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll scrape myself out of bed and I will go and do it, when actually we're overlooking that need. And I think we are not in tune with the nuances of those needs. Like some days staying in bed and not doing the workout might actually I'm doing myself a bit of a disservice there. Whereas another day, getting up out of bed and doing the workout, I may well be depleting myself. Workouts are stressful.
Yeah.
They're to the main positive kinds of stress, but actually when we're depleted, it's a negative stressor. Yeah. So we could be depleting ourselves of a resource that actually we need to use later on in the day, or that actually that physical resource, we might need to use some of that energy cognitively.
Yeah.
So I think it's, the more we get to know ourselves, the more we start listening to, honouring, respecting that little voice inside of us that goes, I know this is what you want. I want that third cup of coffee, and I haven't drunk any water, but actually what is it that I need? And I think we're being told what we want. We're being told what we should aim for. And I think, we've lost the language in so many cases to access. But what is it that I actually need today? And it may look like failure tomorrow. But actually today, it's honouring. It's honouring me. So, and that's hard because it's nuanced. And sometimes, we don't actually know. And when I do coaching with frazzled parents and do therapy with frazzled parents, often the moment of breakdown will be when I say, tell me 3 things you need. I literally don't know. Because they've been so fixated on the needs of others, and actually they've lost the language and the answer.
I felt really disappointed with myself when I started wearing a well-known wearable device. And some mornings will wake up and it will tell me my recovery is on the floor.
Okay.
Like red, 10% recovered. There was a time 2-3 years ago where I would have still got up out of bed on those days and done a spin class or an F45 class.
Yeah.
And that's going to make me feel good. I've woken up feeling rubbish. Ticking that off is going to make me feel good. What a great start to the day. Whereas now I can physically see it telling me my body is not recovered.
Yeah.
I can think, okay, I'll have a morning off and I'll have a slow morning with the dog.
Yeah.
And I feel disappointed that I couldn't recognise or trust that myself before I saw it on a screen. And I suppose it's a positive of these wearable devices, but I think we really need to check in with ourselves in that sense. I
completely agree. And I would say that I used to wear a wearable device. Am I allowed to say which one?
Well, you can do.
So I used to wear an Apple Watch and it had rings, right? And every day you were given the same rings. So every day you were given the same amount of steps to walk. Every day you had to stand up, move this amount of times. And every day it was the same kind of movement calories or whatever it was that you were targeted with. So
that's adding stress.
It was stress because I would just, for years, I would just hit those targets regardless, and actually I now have a watch, and I would honestly say, I know they're not for everyone, but for me, it has been really transformative in starting to tune into and recognize that I wake up with different resources every single day. And I did some live TV the other week, and it was so eye-opening. I was on air and it was like high stress, fun stress. Like I was having the time of my life, having a great time. But I looked afterwards, and whilst I hadn't done many steps at all, I hadn't physically moved that much. The energy that I expended with the adrenaline and the cortisol, the emotional energy had burnt as much energy as if I'd done like a full-on hour workout. And I think, you know, these little insights that recognize that emotional energy is energy. You know, stress is you're using energy in your body. You're depleting your resources.
Well, yeah, your heart rate's going up. Your breathing rate's going up. You've got the adrenaline pumping. Yeah. But I wear a Whoop, which focuses very much on recovery, which I love. Whoop, if you want to sponsor the podcast, feel free to reach out. I think we often need that external validation that there is a reason for how we're feeling, which is why I think this episode will be helpful for people listening who were resonating with some of these feelings of stress and overwhelm and irritability, to know that this is not just kind of in their imagination or because they're weak. Because we often do need someone to tell us, you know what, it's okay to have a day off. And we do need to get more in tune with that, because often a lot of the things that we're doing that are making us feel this way are in the pursuit of this wellness lifestyle. You know, getting good night's sleep, having a job that's rewarding, exercising, cooking healthy food, having these relationships, you know, reading books and listening to podcasts. The intention is all positive, but actually the reality of doing all of that can result in all of the things we've discussed.
And it's not always what you need. But sometimes your alarm might go off at whatever time it goes off in the morning to do all of your things, when actually if you were to really tune into yourself and listen to yourself, you need that lie-in. You need to roll over and go back to sleep. But I think we've been so used to being told that this is what we should aim for, reach for, this is how we should feel, this is what we should be doing, this is the perfect plan for this and that we've tuned out of what it is that actually is ideal for us.
So for people listening like yourself that has young children who can't necessarily decide, I'm going to have a lazy morning this morning, how can you find calm in the chaos?
So I think it is just dropping the anchor down and just thinking, you know what, in this moment, how can I, this is where I am. You know, just checking in with your surroundings, just literally anchoring yourself. Because I think when our focus is off into the future, 100 miles an hour, all the things that there is to do, and we do need to be mindful of that. Like if we weren't mindful of the future, nothing would get done. We wouldn't be looking after ourselves in the future. And if we weren't mindful of the past and the learnings that we can have from it and the history that, you know, is within us, then we wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't be good either. So, but I think what we do need to do is just think, how can what's meaningful to me in this moment? What matters to me in this moment? What does it look like to live that out? So for me, you know, I love a clean, tidy house.
So like,
literally,
this makes
it brings
me nervous
me
about having children.
I have a very tidy house and I have 3 kids, right? But it does mean that I am often running around, picking things up, throwing them about, getting the vacuum out. And sometimes I look, you know, I'm caught by these moments where I'm like running around with a vacuum cleaner, right? Because this is important to me. And then I look over and I see my 3 kids on the sofa. And I just have this little check with myself. Like, I'm doing all of this for us, for them. But actually, in this moment right now, in the next 5 minutes, what would be the most like soul meeting thing that I could do? We just put the vacuum down and just go and sit with them for 5 minutes. Laugh along at whatever they're watching, you know, just be with them. And it's those moments that I remember at the end of the day, because life will just go by. It does go by 100 miles an hour. I have an 11-year-old. I cannot believe it. My little baby is 6 on Monday. And it really does absolutely fly by. And my mum, she's in her 60s. She'll say the same. She'll say, I clicked my fingers and here you are. I don't know how it happened. And I think, what can I do in this moment that I will be grateful that I did at the end of the day, that I'll be grateful that I did at the end of the month, the end of my life. And sometimes it is just thinking, you know what? This means a lot to me, having a tidy house. But actually, you know, if the proverbial was to hit the fan tomorrow, I would wish that I took 5 minutes on the sofa with my kids, right? And my sister died when I was a child. And I think I was 10 when she died. She had cancer. And I'm often thinking, you know, my kids have had a very different life experience to the experience that I had when I was 10. And I speak to my mum. She says, I don't regret a thing. I don't regret a thing about how I structured my work. I don't regret a thing. And she was the main earner. We didn't have much money growing up, but she always made sure she was around at certain parts of the day. And she just says, I don't regret a thing about how present I was with the three of you, and whilst we still had your sister. And I can honestly say there are points in my life where I wouldn't have been able to say that. And I want to make sure that down the line, I can at least say that with some truth, you know, that I did say no to certain things and it was sacrificial in a way. Maybe I turned down great projects. Maybe, you know, there were things that I would have loved to do that I didn't do because actually I remembered some of the time, more of the time, what living in alignment with my values actually looked like. Because I think our culture will tell us that we've got all the time in the world.
Yeah. So if it's sitting with the messy house till the end of the day.
And even if it literally you have to clench your bum cheeks because it's like, I really want to go and like tidy that cupboard or just put that thing away. And it's like, sometimes you have to have these little battles with yourself it gets easier.
I could procrastinate all day tidying. I work from home a lot. I'm doing my PhD at the moment and I find myself putting a wash on, tidying a random drawer, doing Vinted. And I have to be really disciplined because that makes you feel good. That makes you feel productive. But really, it's procrastination.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it can be fear-based, you know, that actually if I start this thing, my standards are so high and perfectionism creeps in and it, you know, that can just make it such a big thing to even think about. So it's easier to procrastinate and do something that feels productive and fulfilling and it has an end time and then you can tick it off and you feel great. So, yeah.
I feel that. I spend a lot of time encouraging people to build sustainable health habits. And I think part of this comes with changing your identity. So, for example, I'm someone who at the weekend would get up and go for a run and a coffee and a pastry with my friend or a workout class and a lunch or something. And so that's how I identify and that's how people identify me. So I'm much more likely to be invited by my friends to go for a walk and a coffee than I am to meet for a drink in a bar.
Yeah.
For people at home who are wanting to change an aspect of their life or build a habit, how important do you think changing the identity in that sense is and like envisioning yourself as someone who does that health habit and lives in that way?
Yeah, I think it can be really motivating to kind of, imagine yourself as someone who does these things, but also not to be afraid of disappointing people. You know, I think sometimes when we know that we want to change something, we know that our friends, our family members, they're so used to who we are that actually, you know, if we start saying no more, so maybe it's about like, I want to address my people pleasing, I want to place healthier boundaries. So that might mean saying no, or it might mean speaking out. It might mean, you know, actually shocking a family member because I say, well, I know you've always joked about that, but actually like it does hurt me, you know, and kind of valuing your voice and speaking out. And I think sometimes, you know, sometimes it's recognizing that if you change, certain people will be surprised. Yeah. If you change, certain people might be disappointed. But you were always the one that would come out for a drink with me.
I know.
And now you're not.
But I always think, do you want me to say yes and turn up feeling overwhelmed, stressed, got a million things I want to do.
And resentful, probably.
And resentful. And if I've got no downtime that day because I've said yes and I've not given you the initial disappointment. Or as my friend, do you want me to say no?
Yeah.
And know that it's actually the right thing to be doing for myself?
Yeah. And know that people won't always get where you're coming from. They won't always understand. You can be, when you start living more in more alignment with your values and more authentically as to who you are, and you start speaking out more, and it's, you can ruffle some feathers along the way. And I think so often we hold back from change and adjusting habits because we are scared of changing our identity and people seeing us in a different light. I remember once being on the beach and it started pouring with rain. Right. And my kids were in the sea and they didn't want to get out. And like everyone around us was literally like, this is in the UK. It was grey and everyone was like hauling all their stuff together and running for cover. My kids didn't want to get out of the sea. So I suddenly had this wild moment and I threw off, not all my clothes, did have my underwear on. And I just like marched into the sea with them. And we just had the most amazing moment. I was splashing around with them and they still remember it years later. And I remember getting out the sea and I remember my husband being like, that's not like you. And I was like, why not?
Yeah.
Maybe it is now. And I think sometimes it's giving yourself permission to do things differently. Sometimes it's giving yourself permission to surprise yourself and the people around you and let other people be responsible for readjusting how they see you. And if it jars for them, then actually, you know, if you're living more authentically, then it can be challenging to relationships. But we can end up really resentful and sometimes underlyingly hurt when we restrict ourselves and we stick with a version of who we've always been in order to protect other people's discomfort or disappointment. So yeah, it's challenging, but it's worth it.
Many people do struggle with self-doubt and that fear of being authentically themselves in case someone doesn't like it, or in case they're judged, or they lose something that they think is important to them. But you've described this as spending your whole life living a half life.
Yeah. It's just restricting yourself and like filtering yourself. And of course, it's good to be a kind person. Like, we have responsibility for how we communicate. We have responsibility to be respectful for other people. But I think so often it comes down to a fear of abandonment. You know, if I suddenly change, if I address this and I'm not that person anymore, and I'm not wanting to go out for drinks, or I'm not wanting to talk in that way and gossip in that way, then, you know, they won't want to be friends. They might step away. They might, when actually what we end up doing is chronically abandoning ourselves. You know, we end up just recognizing that this is uncomfortable for me, or I want more for myself, or actually I'm not happy in this relationship anymore, so I want to do something about that or place a boundary. You know, we end up chronically abandoning that part of ourselves that is whispering. So no wonder when it comes to waking up in the morning and thinking, right, no, I need to go and do that workout, and that little part of ourselves goes, I really need the rest. Like, I'm exhausted. And we shut it down because we're not listening to it in other places in our lives, you know, where it's asking and inviting us to respect ourselves and listening to our values. So I think the more we start doing it in the little things, the more courage we begin to have, and we think, you know what, if I can withstand change and I can grow in confidence and self-worth because of these ways that I'm doing things differently, then actually maybe other people can withstand it. And if they don't, then actually it's worth it for me because I'm feeling happier and more well.
I think we are scared of change. And I think in that, like, how we talk to ourselves is important, because lots of us go through life imagining the worst case scenario. And it's like you then live through the trauma twice. Yes. You live through the trauma twice. How do we stop telling ourselves the worst case scenarios in our head?
So I think we often will, because we're like, our brains are safety focused, and the more frazzled we feel, the more focus we're going to have on what is going to keep us safe. So the more boundaries we're able to place, the more we're able to live in line with our values and do things that really kind of serve and respect us and honor ourselves, then actually the more able we are to kind of address that voice, the safer we feel in ourselves, the less vigilant and switched on we're going to be, the less adrenaline we've got in us that keeps us kind of on that high alert. But I think inviting in it, we're great at making up stories. Often the stories,
I make up stories about everything.
Creative, our brains are very powerful. But what if you just also think, right, if I'm going to write a story that I walk into this room and everyone's going to judge me, why don't I also write another story to sit alongside that I'm going to walk into this room and no one's really going to be thinking about that much of me? And if they are, then really what weight does that actually carry? Do they even really know me?
I think we really think people are more interested in what we're doing than we're really doing. It's actually really funny. I did an experiment. So I played a game at a dinner party, and someone turned up really well-dressed. Yeah. Really taking pride in their outfit. And I gave everyone at the dinner party like a little mission that they had to secretly do. And then the winner was the person who successfully did the mission without getting caught. And for this person that really took pride in what they were wearing, their mission was to change their outfit and see if anyone noticed. No one noticed.
No one noticed. I love that.
People are not that interested in what other people are doing.
It's true.
And yet we live so much in fear of the judgment of other people.
Oh, but if we were more interested in what we were doing and how authentic we were being, then, you know, we'd start to feel so much more like at home in ourselves that, you know what, in reality, people are not judging us as much as we think they are, but people are judging us. You know, I would have walked down on the way here. I walked here from Waterloo Station. There will be people that that caught my eye, that saw me, that thought this, that thought that probably thought things that were so far. I mean, I get the odd message every now and again on social media that I think, wow, you really don't know me at all. Yeah. And it's normally like something negative, or, you know, it's very rare. I'm really lucky. But I think sometimes it's it's not only recognizing that people don't judge you that much, it's also being comfortable with the fact that sometimes people will be judging you. They'll be thinking all sorts of things about you, some that are very close to the line and probably quite true, and some that are so far removed from what, and I think this is why it's so important to have those connections with people, to recoup some of that social energy that we just spend away on everything and invest it in relationships where we feel really seen and known and accepted. Because at the end of the day, so-and-so might think all of these things about me, but actually that person,
those things.
They know the dark corners of my life. They know the worst stories there are to tell. They know my deepest shames. They know they've seen me at my worst, and they love and accept me.
Yeah.
And if they love and accept me knowing all of that, then what that person thinks about me, what weight does that carry? They haven't sat with me whilst I've cried about that or moaned about that or battled through this. So we start just thinking, actually, where are we giving that power to? And the more we can invest in those 3 or 4 relationships, that really, those soul relationships, the less it matters what other people think. Honestly, it's so liberating. And this is me as a people pleaser that like historically lived my life for everyone else. And yeah, you find yourself in all of that.
I can feel my shoulders coming down from my ears in this conversation. You're right, that word liberating is definitely true. If someone listening today is feeling stuck or overwhelmed, or they're just not as happy in their life as they should be from how it looks on the outside, what is one simple thing they could take away today to take a step towards improving their mental well-being?
So I think, asking yourself what you need, not what you want. So next time you feel one of those wants arise, or like that urge to kind of do this, act like this, say this, just check in with yourself, think what is it that I need, and just start to learn the language of that. Because it might be like, I want to just lie on the sofa and zone out on my phone. Okay, what do I need? I need connection. That's what I'm hungry for in all of this. Okay, so how does that translate? I need to pick up the phone to a friend. I need to see if my mate wants to come around and share a pizza with me. Just thinking, what is the need beyond the want? Because I think we're just kind of meeting the wants, a million ways to meet the wants. And actually the need for connection, the need to have our value, to live in line with our values, the need to feel seen and understood and accepted. I think that's often what we're trying to meet in all of these wants.
Yeah.
So it's asking yourself, what do I need? How can I honour that in a little way?
I'm definitely going to take that away.
Good.
My final question, which I ask everyone, is what is your vision of health? What does health look like to you?
Health, to me, looks like respect. Respecting where I'm at, what I need at that point in my life, even if it looks completely different to yesterday. Looks like respecting my feelings, my hopes. That's what wellness looks like. Because actually that's the thing, that if I respect myself, then I'm more likely to engage in relationships, behaviours that actually honour that. And then I will be well. Yeah. Like to the main, I will be well, because I'm meeting more of those kind of, those needs.
Anna Mathur, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Me too. Thank you so much for listening to Vision of Health. I hope you've taken away some practical and realistic health advice that you can implement to improve your lifestyle and get clear on your vision of health. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please do let me know by liking the episode and leaving me a review. If you want to hear more from me, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you have any friends that could benefit from improving their lifestyle, then make sure you share the episode with them. I'll see you next time.